sod home of John and Margaret Backen, Milton, North Dakota, 1898. This sod house was used as the basis for the design of the Homestead Act commemorative stamp in 1962. A miner cuddles with his pet donkey in his lap for the camera in 1915. Just check out the look on both their faces. Back in 1893, deer hunters would camp in hollowed-out logs, truly off the grid. They would spend months in the woods hunting deer. They would sell the whitetail hides for $1. That's how the term buck came to be known as $1. This 1898 photo from a Virginia City, Nevada saloon captures Dead-Eye Dick, the eye patch-wearing cowboy, with 4 pals and 2 bartenders. A gritty snapshot of Wild West life. Cherished photo of Mom, 1892. Comanche Chief Quanah Parker with a portrait of his mother, Cynthia Ann Parker, and sister, Prairie Flower. At the age of 9, Quanah lost his mother when she was taken by the Texas Rangers in 1860. Ann Bassett, Queen of Rustlers, fought powerful ranchers to defend small landowners. Born in Colorado, she grew up in a ranching family and was close to the Outlaws of the Wild Bunch, led by Butch Cassidy, with whom she allegedly had a romance. Lee County Sheriff James Scarborough poses with his 6-shooter, late 1890s. Plagued by outlaws, citizens elected this shootist for 2 terms. His seemingly unorthodox pistol stance makes us wonder how early shooters adopted the 2-handed grip. Dakota preparing buffalo hide, 1890s. With a mixture of brains and other animal fats, this Dakota woman hand rubs the buffalo hide to help soften the leather so it could be made into robes, moccasins, and so on. The Klondike Gold Rush attracted former inhabitants of the West who had experienced similar boomtown cycles. Nearly 100,000 people flocked to this new frontier of opportunity. 2 women seen here dragging sled loaded with provisions through the muddy streets of Skagway, Alaska, in 1898. In 1870, Herman Lawmen, a German immigrant, was captured by Apaches. He fully embraced their culture and became a warrior. After 9 years of raiding with both Apaches and Comanches, he was reunited with his family, but struggled to reintegrate into white society. Apache leaders Chihuahua, Naiche, Loco, Nana, and Geronimo posed for this historic photo while imprisoned at Mount Vernon Barracks. Of these 5 men, only Loco didn't flee the reservation on May 17, 1885. James Younger gang member Bob Younger was sentenced to life in prison after his capture for the failed Northfield bank robbery. Bob wasn't a legend like Jesse James. He didn't crave attention like his brothers Cole or Jim. He was quiet, watchful, built like a granite wall. Big Nose. George Parrott was a cattle rustler and highwayman in the late 19th century. He was sentenced to hang in 1881, but tried to escape and lynched by angry mobs. His skin was made into a pair of shoes and face made into a mask after his lynching. Here is Bloody Knife, Custer's fearless Arikara scout killed at Little Bighorn. This 1873 photo shows him gripping his lever-action .66 rifle 3 years before the legendary battle. A family poses outside a log cabin in the New Mexico Territory, 1895. The woman sitting is an Indian servant. Many Indian people worked for U.S. settlers throughout the 19th century, and enslavement of Native Americans was common before the Civil War. Portrait photos from over a century ago rarely show people smiling, but this photo is an exception. The Kiowa girl's gorgeous smile lights up her face and also suggests a sense of ease in front of the camera. Sheriff Henry Plummer hanged in the gallows he built. Plummer led a gang of road agents in Montana during the gold rush. He was eventually caught and hanged by a vigilante group in Bannock, Montana, 1864. The law and the lawless overlapped often back then. While Wyatt and Josephine Earp went north to Alaska in search of gold in 1897, they made more in partnership with Charles Hoxie and their Dexter Saloon business in Nome from 1899 to 1901 than any amount of gold sifted from their claims. Buffalo hunter Ralph Morrison, killed and scalped by Cheyennes near Fort Dodge, Kansas, December 1868. Lieutenant Red of 3rd Infantry and John O. Austin, chief of the Scouts, kneel beside the body to inspect it. A young Uinta Ute bride accompanied by her Ute warrior on horseback, northwest Utah, circa 1873. The warrior's body was painted with yellow and black stripes, marking for battle. The image depicts John Sontag, a well-known Wild West outlaw, injured before his death in 1891. Involved in train robberies and pursuits, Sontag was fatally injured during the Battle of Stone Corral in California while resisting capture, ending his criminal journey in the American West. A Native American rider sits aboard an Indian motorcycle around 1910. These beautiful machines were America's first motorcycles, manufactured in Springfield, Massachusetts from 1901 to 1953. This is one of the only known photos of a black cowgirl, Nellie Brown. But there is no Nellie Brown recorded in Western history. The rein Nellie hold is called Makat, most common amongst the California vaqueros of the 18th and 19th centuries. In 1883, Potato Creek Johnny moved to Deadwood, Dakota Territory. He wouldn't discover the gold nugget he holds here until after 46 years of prospecting. He used to say, "The nugget looked like a woman's leg. I'm still looking for the leg," he would tell everyone. Sod Homestead of James McCrea, Custer County, Nebraska, 1888. James McCrea stands by the well with his wife sitting on the chair and grandson standing beside them. The man on the reaper is Mr. Juker. The Maid of Dreams, 1909. Photographed by Edward Sheriff Curtis, it bid for $12,000 at Heritage Auctions in 2014, one of the top-selling frontier Indian photos at auction. A group of men in a tavern in Southern California, 1890s. The bartender is toasting the camera with a drink in his right hand. A mirror hangs behind the bar, and the reflection of the bartender in the mirror is visible. 2 advertisements on the wall are for Lemp Brewery. New Mexico cowboy Harry Pate playing his fiddle before an open fireplace after a hard day of ranch work, early 20th century. Cowboys used music to relax and calm the cattle to avoid stampedes. 2 saloon girls show off the clothes on the Alaskan frontier, 1890. Saloon girls served as servers or dancers, earning their income primarily through drink sales. Killin' Jim Miller's suit of armor. Did Miller get the idea of wearing body armor from Ned Kelly? It's hard to say whether or not Jim Miller was emulating Ned Kelly, but the idea of wearing some kind of body armor was not unique. The Apache Kid and Scouts from San Carlos during the Geronimo Campaign, 1885. Apache Kid was essentially adopted by Al Sieber, the chief of the Army Scouts. In 1887, he got involved in a drunken fight that ultimately earned him a death sentence, but he redeemed himself by saving a jail guard from death. Sylvester Rotting House, 1886. Rarely did photographers make it to frontier families, but when they did, families wanted to show how well they were doing out west by stripping the house and pose for the camera. This family would like you to see their big melons are and a cow that appears to be able to climb your house. Home from the Hunt, Taos Pueblo, New Mexico, early 1900s. A man seated in front of a fireplace. A basket is in the foreground. Manny Hyman's Saloon is where Doc Holliday's last gunfight takes place. Leadville puts Tombstone in the shade with its 120 saloons, 118 gambling halls, 110 beer gardens, and 35 brothels. Check out the early electric meter on the boardwalk next to the clock. Jenny Bauder's brothel at Jerome, Arizona in 1898. Jenny is the woman in the black dress in the center of the balcony. This was her second building on this site, which burned in 1898. When Jenny died in 1905, she was reputed to be the richest woman in the Arizona Territory. Geronimo sits behind the wheel of a 1903 locomobile at the 101 Ranch near Ponca City, Oklahoma. This is the exact photograph that inspired Michael Martin Murphey's classic song, Geronimo's Cadillac. Sergeant Andrew Martin Chandler of the 44th Mississippi Infantry Regiment and his named slave, Silas Chandler, with Bowie knives, revolvers, pepper box, shotgun, and canteen. Born into slavery, Silas served as body servants during the Civil War, circa 1861. Alexander Oscar Babel, the cowboy pianist, and cornetist Mattie Babel, most likely his wife, circa 1880s. Babel played for enthusiastic audiences across the United States and billed himself as a simple cowboy who had developed a miraculous musical talent. At 1,100 feet under the town of Butte, these two copper miners toiled with their mule and ore wagon to make a living in 1910 in the Raris mine. The hard rock mine was later consumed by the Berkeley pit. Pancho Villa sips his milk as he waits for his soldiers to board the train in 1914. Villa hated alcohol, and he did not drink, not even a drop. He even threatened his troops with execution if he ever saw them drinking. Oglala manned plenty horses from the Rosebud Indian Reservation. 9 days after the Wounded Knee Massacre, he killed Lieutenant Edward W. Casey, commandant of the Cheyenne Scouts. He defended it was to redeem himself for learning white culture for 5 years. 2 elderly Confederate veterans holding Georgia battle flag of American Civil War during Confederate reunion, Washington, D.C., 1917. Distant view of Devil's Tower and reflection of tower in stream in foreground. The tower is sacred to several Plains tribes. In 1906, President Theodore Roosevelt declared Devil's Tower to be the nation's first national monument. During the heyday of the Old West, drugs were pretty common and legal. The Chinese introduced opium when they came to America to build railroad lines. Drugs were not always used to get high, but to relieve pain. An almost dreamlike look at a stagecoach ascending Zimmerman Trail in Billings, Montana. This photo was taken by Richard Throssell around 1918.